Imagine you're running a race and just before crossing the finish line, you freeze. Now, it's not because you're tired and you can't go on. It's because crossing the line means stepping into that unknown. Because success can be exhilarating, it can be awesome, but it can also be pretty terrifying. So, what if it changes how others see you? What if it puts pressure on you to keep having to achieve? Now, fear of success isn't about failing, okay? Fear of making it happen. It's actually about what happens when we win. And it's not even if we win, it's what happens when we win. So let's talk about breaking through that invisible wall. Hey y'all, welcome to the Athlete's Health Deep Dive, the weekly episode where we get a mental performance theme of the week, dive deep into its insights through some tips, tricks to remember it, tools to apply it, and the goal here is to just bring you more value, the audience, the athletes, coaches, parents, anyone, giving you a glimpse into some themes and topics surrounding mental performance in these longer conversations and what some conversation points in our coaching could entail. Ultimately, aiming to help you out, get you using these mental tips, tricks, tools, adding them to your tool belt, your bag, and up your mental performance. Then at the end, maybe you are more intrigued to check out some of our coaching services. But each week we have a theme, and this week's theme is around fear, but it's actually about coping with the fear of success, because this is something that actually is where the fear comes from so often. It's the fear of what if this, what if that, what if, but one of the times it's, and you can probably relate to this, what if I do win? And it's pretty exhilarating, but there's also that hint of what else there. So without further ado, let's dive deep into coping with the fear of success. Tip number 1, name your fear. We have to acknowledge to advance, because have you ever stopped to ask yourself what success really means to you and why it actually could potentially scare you? Now, success can really kind of feel like stepping into the spotlight, okay? And sometimes we'd rather stay in the background. But if we're not naming the fear, if we avoid it, that fear is going to control us. And then it can turn into the fears of what if this, what if that, what if this person, what if that person. But when we start by recognizing it, we take the power back. And that is ultimately what we're going to be using with this tip, trick, and the tools. This trick is the fear mapping. And what we want to do are use these tools of writing down what success really means to us and list kind of what we fear about achieving it, right? Does it come with more eyeballs? Does it come with longer hours in the gym, in the film room? Does it come with more pressure on us to do what we just did the next time? And these, it can go on and vary per person to person, but that is something that we can do. And the other thing that we can do on top of that is then categorize the fears into these internal stuff, into stuff that's kind of like self-doubt, things that we're thinking, and then external, outside stuff, pressure from others. So basically what we just did is we made a giant list. First off, we made a success. What does it mean to us? And then we made a giant list of what are some of the fears along doing this. Maybe it is a fear of losing, right? And what that means. But that also can be along that fear of success. We have both fears. And with that, we then categorize it into inside our own stuff and outside pressure from others. And a while ago, actually, I heard this story that a mom was talking to me, and their high school athlete was younger. Okay. He was like a sophomore, but he was taking the role of captain. Now, there was a little bit of fear in that. They couldn't meet the expectations that the high sophomore, he never was a captain before. He had the skills, but did he have the leadership? But one thing that we did, when we did a little slightly different than this, but this applies the exact same way, is map out their fears. Realize what kind of is meaning the most to them, where their fears are coming from the most, and which ones were more self-imposed, because those were those ones that they could work on the best and they could take the most control of that one. So overall, I want us to realize that tip number one in this fear, especially fear of success topic, is name your fear. Acknowledge to advance with that trick of the fear mapping. We want to map it out. What does success mean? List it out, internal, outside, and start looking at how we can take that power back. Tip number two is reframe success, because it is not about perfection. But what does success mean? If it wasn't about being always perfect, but what if it was about growth? What is about the opportunity? And that is ultimately what else we can look at success meaning. And it still definitely can be about winning. And I mean, that doesn't mean perfect though, but it can be about what we get along the way. And this tip, that's why this tip is the reframe success, not about perfection, because we so often see success as that endpoint, and rightfully so, it is a very good marker to track. But that also means that failure is not an option in kind of using success as the end point. It creates that kind of almost mindset, that mental state of this unnecessary pressure, right? We already got enough pressure from the coach, from the teammates, from our own goals that we want, from the crowd. The list can go on and on. So instead, we can reframe success around this journey, the climbing the mountain, instead of just the perfect view at the top of the mountain. And that is why we're using this trick of a success as a stepping stone. And we're going to use these tools to redefine success in the progress, not the perfection. And it's somewhat cliche, but if we actually try this, all of a sudden we can celebrate these small wins along the way. We're reducing the pressure. We're having more fun while we're doing it. And now we're way higher on our stepping stones on that towards that top of the mountain than we would have to if we were only framing success. Because then any day that we maybe didn't have that success, it felt like we got kicked all the way down the mountain and we had to restart the whole thing. But if we put it around these other areas of defining it, of the growth, of the opportunity that presents itself, we can still be climbing that mountain. And that's ultimately why, like in the sprinting term, in the racing term, when we can look at each race, and if we're winning the race, if we're beating our competition there, or if we're looking at our PRs, our personal best, our personal records, to help perform without that fear of still knowing who the competition is, where they're at, where we stand in them, what lanes we're in, but also knowing what our last times were, what our last jumps were, what our last throws were, and understanding that we can do what we can do to beat that. And sometimes we can't always control what is on the other lane, but we can control our own lane and what we are doing with it. And that's why the sprinter redefining what was a goal of his of PRs versus anyone else he was competing against is a perfect example of this tip number two: reframe success not being about perfection, but rather using the success as a stepping stone, and redefining success as progress, not the perfection, celebrating those small wins to keep climbing up and reduce pressure. Thank you for tuning in to the Athlete's Health podcast, and I just wanted to share what we're all about. The Athlete's Health is an online mental gym helping athletes build confidence and resilience in both sports and life. Now, we've got something for everyone, whether it's the free newsletters, tips and tricks on them, or engaging social media content where we're broadcasting these episodes and sharing these actionable insights for you to take home and use right away. Athletes, coaches, parents, even teams, we're offering everything from these free resources to personalized coaching and monthly memberships in the gym. Plus, with partners who share our vision, we're creating multiple ways to check in and grow with us wherever you are. Now, if you have questions about the Athlete's Health or just want to chat about mental performance in life and just want to talk it up, reach out anytime. Now, together, we're building TAH Titans, those resilient, hardworking, and ready to conquer their goals people, athletes. Now, let's get back to this episode. Keep striving towards greatness. Tip number three is adjust to the spotlight. Embrace that change. Because what if thriving under pressure was just a skill and you didn't really practice it yet, all right? What if that spotlight and performing to your peak under that light is something that you need some of the reps in? And it's not just something that those people over there have it and it looks like they're crushing it and everything in the sense, but instead it's something that we actually need to understand because success often brings that attention and that attention can feel overwhelming. So with that little bit of success comes a little more attention and this can start snowballing, but it also can be that snowball that bursts and breaks us. Now, this attention is a signal for growth, right? This is a sign that we are growing. Eyeballs are on us. We're doing something right. Keep it up. So instead of shying away, we really should try and start using this to amplify that confidence, adjust to the spotlight, embrace the change. That's why this trick is the spotlight skill building, where we can practice visualizing techniques. Imagine ourselves really thriving under the attention, under the eyeballs. Put it in our brain as before we're there and start getting those reps in, even if we're not physically in that sense right now. When it comes, we'll be ready for it because we can also develop a post success ritual to stay more grounded when that event comes. And by grounded, I don't mean attached to the ground. I mean in that Zen state, in that flow state, and whatever state works for us, we can get that post success, those eyeballs situations to handle them so we can stick in that moment, especially when we need to the most. And in gymnastics, this is a great case where this can really work because as gymnasts level up, and I've done a tiny bit of gymnastics coaching in the past, and to move on to the next level of training, right? You have to hit the milestones. And with that, all of a sudden, hey, this kid's pretty good. They have that skill. Now more coaches, more eyeballs are on you. You have to adjust to the spotlight. And that is why working with their coach to visualize the performance. If you go watch any of the Olympics and on any of the things, I'm just thinking of the pommel horse right now. Pommel horse, I mean, where you can watch them do the full routine, not even on the horse, because they just are understanding and visualizing it as they go. And they're probably thinking about it in front of the crowd in the stadium, developing that calming ritual to combat the nerves, which is why we're using tip number 3 of adjusting to the spotlight. Embrace the change. Use the spotlight skill building with those visualizing techniques that work for you to imagine it under the pressure. The post-success ritual where you have the eyeballs, where you can stay grounded and keep it continuing forward. Tip number 4 is plan for what's next. Stay grounded. And that's what we just covered, but I want to go more in depth with that because I want us to think about how do we stay grounded when we achieve a goal? Do we ever wonder? Because think about this. Have you actually won that game or reached a goal that you had? Probably celebrated, right? Maybe you were like, okay, now we're already going back to practice because we know we still want that state championship. We know we want that next thing. We've already had a plan. But there's probably other instances where maybe school was over or you finished something and you thought, just sat back and thought, what's next? I did all that time. I put all that time into it. I'm here now. What's next? Kind of almost floating around like, I'm floating around in space. That's this, and this can be a fear, right? This can be a fear of success, which sometimes really stems from that uncertainty of what comes after achieving a big goal, right? We hit that big goal. What are we going to do once we get that? So planning this helps prevent that almost post-success burnout where we're just floating around and we're like, and we come crashing down. So we're going to use this trick of the next level blueprint and add these tools to our tool belt to really elevate our game and what we do with our success and any of the fear that we may have. First off, I want us to create a plan with some short-term steps after we're achieving the goal. Nothing crazy, nothing big, but just the 2-3 small steps once we get the goal that we're going to be doing. And with that, then we can set a new goal that aligns with our overall long-term vision. And that is exactly what we're going to do here. A soccer team that I knew that I studied, they won their championship. But then all of a sudden, and I heard this from some of their players, they set that off-season improvement goal to keep their momentum. They wanted to keep it going. They set the next thing up. It wasn't just kind of chill out, relax. It was, okay, we got this close. And it actually was partly, well, they did win, but then they won like the sub-state, the state. This was in a different area. But then they wanted to win the next thing, national thing, per se, and they didn't get that one. But that was their next goal. And they wanted to keep what they had going, but they wanted to add more to it. They used tip number 4 and plan for what was next. They were staying grounded. They were not just floating around. They used the trick, the next level blueprint, and the tools of creating some short-term steps after achieving their goal, after the season was over, and it aligned with that new goal that they set of what they wanted within their long-term vision. Lastly, tip number 5, I see we're going a little long here, but it's such a rich conversation here that we are going in the weeds a little bit, but it's still fun. And this tip is build your support system, because success takes a village. Who do you trust to keep you grounded, to keep you celebrating your wins, to keep you hungry after you just enjoyed the feast? It's such an important topic, and that is why the success really takes a village. Because if you just feasted and you're just reaping in that feast, you're not going to be as hungry later on. You kind of had it. So what's the village doing for you? In addition, on a different side of that, success can be isolating if we think we have to handle it alone. If we think we don't have anyone else kind of thinking like that for us. Yeah, we have our team. Maybe it is more individual, and we think, oh, we win. I mean, who's going to kind of think the same way we think? That's why if we can have that lean on a support system, it really helps us stay balanced. We lean a little bit, we get right back to it. We stand up strong and we keep going. That's why this trick is the success squad, where we can use these tools of identifying mentors, family, friends, people who we can celebrate the success, the wins, and stay grounded together. So we're not floating aimlessly and wondering what's next or thinking we're on top of the world, which I mean, at the time, we very well may be, and I'm not knocking that at all. We got to keep that going, right? So in addition to that, we can schedule those regular check-ins, share the goals, share the ideas, get the feedback, so we can keep progressing. And this would be almost think Michael Phelps. Goal in mind, keeps it going. But I'm not solely looking at Michael Phelps here. I'm looking at his coach. I'm looking about how they talked every day around their goals, around the plan behind it, that their village, their support system, even the teams that they'd swim with, or the people he'd be competing against, his times he'd be competing against, those PRs to tie it back to what we talked about. Regularly talking about the goals, the challenges, making him swim without goggles, just in case a time would come when he'd have to swim without goggles. These are what we're talking about with tip number 5 of building your support system, that village to breed the success. Use the trick, the success squad, and the tools, family, friends, mentors, anyone you can celebrate the wins with, and anyone who you don't have to handle it alone with, who will be there in your village the entire time. So you can check in, share feedback whenever the case comes. All in all, we covered 5 key tips, tricks, and tools with understanding and working with the fear of success, with success being one fear. So I want to go through them one last time here, just overall summary, so you can take these home, use 1 or 2 of them, tips, tricks, or tools, and up your mental game. Number 1, name your fear. We had that fear mapping where we identify and categorize the fears so we can take back that control. Number 2, reframe success. Success is a stepping stone, right? Focus on the progress, the growth to get to the top of the mountain instead of just the perfect view at the top of the mountain. Look at it as we get up of it so we don't get knocked down the mountain with every kind of incorrect, Number 3, adjust to the spotlight. Spotlight skill building, use the visualizing, the grounding rituals to really thrive under that pressure. And that brings us to number 4, plan for what's next, that next level blueprint. Prevent burnout with those short-term and long-term planning where we do stay stand for being grounded. And lastly, build your support system with that success squad. Surround yourself with the people who want to celebrate, who want to get through it, the highs and the lows, and support your journey. Now, all in all, hopefully you start to understand a little bit more here how to win with the fear and ultimately how you can cope with the fear of success. Use these this week. Let me know, reach out, and thank you for tuning in to the Athlete's Health.